Before I begin this video, I wanted to say the author of the first story drew a diagram of his surroundings. If you need a better visual, there will be a link in the description below. But anyway, let's begin. This happened to me about a week ago. Honestly, it was one of the freakiest encounters of my life. I read the rules, hope I'm not breaking any. This is 10 billion% true, despite how much it sounds like a Reddit no sleep kind of story. It may sound fake to a lot of people, and all I have is my word, but I swear on my life, and the life of everyone I love, that this is true. I was scared out of my fucking mind, and I will remember this encounter until the day I die. Last week, I took my dog to this fenced dog park. I try to go around 5 or 6 because that's when most people get off work and bring their dogs. So there's a large amount of dogs for my puppy to socialize and play with. It rained earlier in the day but stopped, so I was surprised to see only one person in the dog park. I knew both him and his dogs, and we chatted for a bit while our dogs chased each other around. Also worth mentioning, the atmosphere was just so creepy. A low, thick fog covered the entire dog park. It was that horrible weather that somehow was both humid and cold. Just a dreary, rainy fall day. It wasn't that dark yet, so when the guy and his dog left, I decided to stay for a while and play fetch with my dog. Mistake number 1. I threw the ball around for a bit, and on one throw, something caught my eye. There was a man in all black, hood up, standing at the fence, completely still, facing towards me. I couldn't see his face, so I don't know if he was looking at me. I tried to brush it off, as maybe he's just watching us play fetch. I do have a 5-month-old puppy, after all, who is adorable and draws a lot of attention from strangers. I threw the ball in this direction a few more times, so I could glance at him to see if he would move on. No, he never did. At that point, I started to get pretty freaked out. I didn't want to stay alone in a dog park with only one entrance. It was significantly darker at this point as well, and I really wanted to get out of there. But in order to leave, I'd have to walk past this man. Here's a shitty diagram I drew, because it's hard to explain sometimes. The scale is fucked up and completely off in the diagram, but hopefully you get the gist. The dog park only has one entrance on one side. You have to walk the length of the dog park on this path in order to get to where you park. Walking past him was the only way out. So, I gathered my stuff and began to leave. I walked to the entrance, glancing at him every few seconds, and he's still standing completely still. But now, he's turned more towards me. I took out my phone and pretended to be talking to someone, saying things like, "I'll be there in 20 minutes. 15? What? That's too soon. Okay, Dad, I'll try." The moment I left the dog park, he turned around and started walking away, towards the parking lot. I was relieved, but only for a moment. He wasn't walking, he was shuffling? Only a few feet at a time, then he would stop completely, turn around and look at me, and then keep going. Repeat 3 or 4 times. Then, his walking changed. He started throwing his head back, looking up at the sky, repeatedly, rhythmically, and taking huge strides forward. His movements very bizarre, an exaggerated tiptoe-like walk. If you've ever read The Smiling Man on Reddit No Sleep, it reminded me of that. Like, exactly like that. Except he was moving slow, not fast. The moment he started doing it, that story was the first thing to pop into my head. And still, every 5-10 feet or so, he would look back at me. I was walking behind him, slowly, in the same direction towards my car. Needless to say, I was pretty much 100% convinced I was either going to be raped, stabbed, robbed, kidnapped, or whatever. I was scared to death. My whole body was tense and cold. I've never felt that kind of fear in my entire life. Like deep, horrible, pit of your stomach, I could die tonight, fear. Then suddenly, he turns sharp and runs into the trees alongside the path. I took this opportunity to pick up the pace and pass the spot where he ran into the trees. Mistake number 2. Barely seconds after I pass him, I hear a rustling, and he's coming out of the trees, behind me, fast, no longer walking like the smiling man. A fast, curt power walk straight at me. This is where I noped the fuck out and just started sprinting. Side note, my puppy was clueless to everything and was having a great fucking time. Oh boy, running. He's useless. I was only about 30 yards from my car. I scooped my dog up, not an easy feat to do while running, he's 40 pounds, and jumped into the driver's seat. Started my car, locked the doors, and peeled out of there as fast as I could. As I was backing up out of my parking space, the light shined for just a second on the man, who was standing at the end of the path of the parking lot, completely still, just staring. I may or may not have called my mom and cried the entire way home. I did. I was so shaken up, I didn't want to walk around at night for a few nights. Even writing this has made me incredibly uncomfortable. I've told people that I frequently see there about the encounter, and how I make sure that I'm never the last person in the dog park. Creepy, imitating smiling man? Let's never meet again, ever. This took place 14 years ago, when I was 15 years old. I grew up in a not-so-safe suburb of Athens, so in my life I unfortunately had a few creepy encounters. But this one deserves the prize of creepiness. So, one day, I received a text message from an unknown number, in my phone from a boy, let's say John. He claimed to be a boy from my school, and that he liked me very much, but was too shy to come and talk to me, so he found my phone number, but would not tell me how. I was not flattered at all, basically because I've always been a shy and very private person, so I kind of felt like he invaded my personal space. Anyway, I decided to turn my mobile off and take a good night's sleep with the hope that he would get the message that I was not interested and he would not text me again. The next day, I woke up to find 10 messages on my phone. Some of them were romantic song lyrics, and some of them were him begging me to give him a chance and meet him. To tell you the truth, at some point it crossed my mind that my classmates were playing a prank on me because I was not a very popular girl in school, with my black metal clothes and my sketchbook always in my hands. I got dressed and went to school, hoping that they were not laughing at me behind my back. As soon as I got there, he messaged me telling me that he really loved Behemoth, and my heart started racing because on that particular day, I was wearing my Behemoth t-shirt. I said to myself, that's it, and texted him that I wanted to meet him. I needed to know who he was and why the hell he was spying on me. Of course, he was more than happy to meet me the same afternoon, behind school in a supermarket parking lot, which was really isolated and dangerous. I agreed. My plan, of course, was to arrive there earlier and hide behind the huge dumpsters that were there in order to just see who he was. And that's exactly what I did. But no one was there. I texted him and asked him what he was wearing. He told me he had long hair and was wearing a black shirt with a pair of blue jeans. Suddenly, a blue van arrived and parked very close to the dumpsters that I was hiding behind. 2 middle-aged men got out. One of them was short, bald, and really fat, and the other one was bald, tall, and fit. They both looked very clean, and they were wearing black shirts with ties and great fancy trousers. I immediately called the number, and the short guy's phone rang. He didn't answer it. He texted me, "My battery is low. I'm here waiting. Where are you, babe?" I froze with fear. Who were these men? What did they want from me? How the hell did they know my name, and how did they find my phone number? I acted quickly. I wrote down the van's number and called the police, telling them that I am in great danger. A couple of minutes later, I heard the police coming, and they quickly got into the van and disappeared. The police tracked the van's number down and found out that the vehicle was stolen. They advised me to change my mobile number and promised they would do what they could to find them. My dad started driving me to and from school. Next day at school, one of my friends asked me if my dad had found me and if everything was okay. I was confused. She then explained to me that a couple of days ago, my dad showed up outside school and told her that some people robbed him and they took his mobile phone, amongst other things. So he needed my number to call me because he could not find me, and he needed to know if I was okay because he knew that this particular day I had skipped class and he was worried. I asked her what did he look like, because she had never met my dad before. She told me he was a middle-aged, bald, short, heavy man, dressed really nice. Now, let me tell you, my dad is tall, young man, with long hair, and he kind of looks like Aragorn from Lord of the Rings. So try to imagine my terror when she described the man from the van. The first mystery was solved. My friend did this huge mistake and gave a stranger with a totally unconvincing story my number. But still, how did these men know my name? How did they know she was one of my very few friends? I had no Facebook or other accounts at the time because I did not even own a computer. How the hell did they know all those details about my life? And the most important, what would they have done to me if I had fallen into their trap? In conclusion, the police never found anything about them. I never saw them again, but there are times, until now, that I live abroad, that I have these strange feelings of being watched. So creepy, fancy-dressed bald guys, let's never ever meet again. It was the first time Seattle had ever been in the Super Bowl. Year 2005. The only reason I remember this is because I remember the loud cheers that surrounded my friend and I as we were out in the woods, unsure if we would ever be able to escape the dark forest alive. At the time, the cheers sounded more like screams. Allow me to explain. I was a 14-year-old girl who loved skateboarding with her best friend. We were little petite punk girls who loved to explore and skateboard. My friend was over at my house, but everyone there was transfixed by the football game. The whole neighborhood was filled with noises of people cheering on the Seahawks. It was, and still is, a safe and normally quiet middle to upper class neighborhood. It was around maybe 7 or 8 p.m., but by this point, it was very dark. Not pitch black, but that deepest, darkest blue that remains until midnight. My friend had cigarettes, and we decided we were going to sneak away and skateboard to the forest down the street to smoke and hang out in the woods. The woods were a long stretch of forest that rested in the middle of our neighborhood. On each side, steep slopes ran upward and backed into the fences of people's houses. Everyone called it a green belt, because the only entrance was at the beginning and the only exit on the other end. It felt like you were in a valley of sorts, surrounded by trees and houses far above. All of the neighborhood kids explored it, and it was not uncommon to find hidden trails that led towards makeshift forts. Anyway, we arrived at the forest and walked until we found a clearing far enough away from the entrance that adults couldn't see us smoking. At the time, we didn't realize this, but most every single adult was inside watching the Super Bowl. It felt safe there, in the dark, smoking and laughing with my friend, because we could hear cheers echoing from nearby houses. We had enough cigarettes to each have our own. but we liked sharing one at a time and passing it back and forth. It made us feel connected and cool. We were sharing our second cigarette, which was in between my fingers. I remember my friend laughing, trying to grab it from me. All of a sudden, she stopped laughing. Her eyes grew wide, and she slowly pointed behind me. "Not going to work, Jess." I thought she was trying to make me look away so she can grab the cigarette out of my hand. I could barely hear her whisper over the cheers that echoed through the forest. "I am not joking." I turned around and looked behind me, my eyes squinting in the dark. I didn't see anything until I looked at the top of the slope. The top of the slope, which ran about 50 feet up, was not that far from us. There, a man was standing, watching us. The woods were almost always empty, except for the occasional kid or teenager. Adults just used the woods as a place to dump yard clippings and old compost stuff. He was wearing all black and had on a ski cap. His hands were shoved deeply into his pockets. I remember thinking he was very tall, though I couldn't see his facial features very well. I waved at him, wondering how long he'd been standing there. It struck me that he may have been there the whole time. I hoped it was a neighbor. I waited for him to yell at us for smoking, threatened to tell my parents, anything. He didn't wave back. He didn't make a sound. "Hello?" I choked out. The man did not respond. His hands remained in his pockets. The dim light from a distant back porch illuminated him ever so slightly. I whispered to my friend, "Jess, what do we do?" The man took his hands out of his pockets. He had on gloves, and not gardening gloves. He walked one step down the slope towards us. I could hear the sounds of leaves crunching beneath him. He stood still again, watching and waiting. More cheers erupted in the distance. The cheers that sounded so comforting less than half an hour ago now sounded foreboding. "I don't know," I whispered. "If we scream, no one would even be able to hear us. Everyone is screaming right now." Tears began to pool in her eyes. I have never seen her cry, and I had known her for 9 years by this point. I decided I had to think, and fast. Crunch. The man took another step. "What?" I screamed. "What do you want from us?" He began to pull his ski cap down. It was then that we both realized it wasn't a ski cap, but rather a ski mask. I yelled at her, "Run! Grab your skateboard!" At the time, I was thinking we could hit him with our skateboard if he tried anything. Probably silly, being as we each only weighed about 100 pounds or less. We got up and began running out of the woods. Like a horror movie, the man simply walked at a fast pace after us. I guess we weren't running very fast because we each were holding a skateboard. Once we got out of the woods, it was all uphill back towards my house. The man was a house-length distance or so behind us. His mask was pulled back up again. I wanted to ring a neighbor's doorbell, yell, anything, but we were so scared. Scared no one could hear us. Scared that if we ran to a neighbor's house, that they wouldn't be home. We ran as fast as we could up that dang hill. We were about 3 houses away from my home, when the man behind us just stopped. We kept running anyway. We made it back to my house, breathing heavily and covered in dirt from running through the forest. What exactly had just happened? "Girls, there you are!" I thought my dad was angry that we'd left without asking. Instead, he just sighed and said, "Well, the Seahawks just lost the Super Bowl." So, creepy masked man who watches girls in the forest from above? Let's not meet again. Ever. Thanks for listening to more true scary stories from Reddit. Don't forget to hit like if you enjoyed this, and subscribe for even more dark stories. I have a goal to gain at least 50 subscribers, so please share this if you enjoy these true scary stories, and maybe we'll be able to make that goal. Have a great morning, everyone, and as always, stay safe.